Welcome to another edition of Vigorously with me, Val Kleinhands. Very excited to get into the plus size baddie universe today. Content creator who you might know as the plus side of me, Rebecca Agosta, is here. Rebecca, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you
Wow.
for being here.
I think you might be the first person ever to call me a baddie, but I will take it. I'll put it in my back pocket.
It's facts. It's facts. We don't discriminate here. It's facts. Like, to put yourself on the internet in a plus size form is not easy shit. It's not at all.
No, it's not. No, it's not at all.
So I consider all of you baddies. I really
Yeah.
do.
I love that. I think there's an element of myself that's like, I'm a baddie. Like, but I'm like that kid in the wind, like, you're a baddie, you can do
Yeah.
it. It's still
Yeah.
something I'm hyping myself up to feeling, because mostly I'm like, I'm a fat nerd, who's doing my thing, but that is baddie as well. Like it is.
Oh, okay. I would not have gotten nerd from your
Oh, really?
IG at
Okay,
all.
cool.
Not at
I'm
all. Not at
Well,
all.
see,
So what
like
makes you nerdy?
I'm an academic. I
Mm,
kind of went through the academic pipeline. I work at a university. I'm very like I tend to be growing up like the mom in the group, the responsible one, the one that's
okay.
like, all of you are acting unhinged, come back a little bit more to center. So, when I think like baddie, I do think a little bit more like released energy and I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm a little contained, but I do think I'm embracing, as I continue to get older, I'm just embracing a little bit more of like, you don't have to be so contained. It's okay to not, but for sure that's
Yeah.
my pathway.
I love that. And you're a writer too, from what I understand. Speaking of the academic part, I think that's where that comes into play. So you're
Yeah,
probably getting all that energy out in your writing. And maybe
yeah,
that's why we're just at consistent vibes.
yeah, maybe so, maybe so.
Well, so the fact that I was stalking your IG, obviously, I've done that for a while, but and the fact that you have to explicitly put not a dating profile in your bio just sends me every time I read it. Are these boys out here really playing in your DMs?
Oh my gosh, let me get them open right now. No, it's funny because the problem is they come in with no context, no
It's just,
hello.
hey, yeah,
It's
what are
just
you
an
doing?
immediate like, "Can I take you on a date?" And I'm like, "You live in LA. No.
Mm.
When you flying over to Charlotte, North Carolina to take me on a date?" Just like so much of it is unrealistic, and it's either nothing or show me this body part or will you marry me?
Oh,
It's the extremes on
whoa.
any end. It's really never, "Hi, I'm a person doing cool stuff online, and I see you're doing cool stuff online, let's talk." It's never that.
Gradually.
Yeah, yeah, I had to say, "No, don't even come to me with that energy. This is not the space. Not the space at all."
I mean, for me, that would be like, I would give myself a pat on the back. I'm like, wow, I have to do that. But then now I'm like, I don't know if I want those gross DMs either. It gets to be a
Yeah,
lot.
the thing is, yeah, it's never good stuff, if I was getting hit on by people that I was intrigued by, would I
Hmm.
remove that? Sure, DMs open, but the DMs I'm getting are not welcome DMs, so
Oh my God. I love it, the Charlotte connection that we have too. I mean, you are doing really cool things right in your own backyard.
yeah.
We were talking a little bit about my brother, and he's lived there for a few years.
Mhm.
I've visited the city multiple times. I love the city. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. You have done some really, really, really cool things for the plus size community in your area. You've made comfortable spots for
Yeah.
all of you.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
So, it's funny because pre-COVID, even though I worked in Charlotte, went to school in Charlotte, I live outside the city and I really never claimed it as a space of mine. I would go
Mm,
to university and then I would leave again. But after COVID, I think in general, my need for socialization was much higher. And I had gone, for years, I've gone to plus size events elsewhere where other people are hosting them. And I really wanted a space to do it locally. And it kind of was one of those moments of like realizing like, okay, you're gonna have to create the space you want. Like
I'm
someone's
learning
not,
that.
yeah, someone's not gonna magically create a Charlotte community. I'm going to have to do it. And I did have a friend at the time that like put some motivation under me because she was also interested in it. So we co-founded Charlotte Plus. I think back in 2022 at this point, And we had our first event, which was painting pottery at a little
Fun.
pottery place. Yeah, because we're trying to like find things to do that people could just pay what they wanted to pay. And it's grown since then. We've had sex and relationship talk events. We've
Ooh.
um We've gone out to eat at restaurants. We like to try different types of activities. So one thing that we did was, well, a lot of plus women are interested in photo shoots, and a lot of people also won't spend the money on photo shoots for
Mhm.
themselves. So we worked and had like a boudoir shoot one time, and a kind of like a love your body shoot that was a Valentine's event. And then we also did a spooky witch shoot this past October with a fat
Yes.
photographer, which was really also great, like finding other fat entrepreneurs or small businesses that we can work with. That's been really fun as well.
Mhm.
And then one of our most recent big events was a Galentine's event this past February. We worked with a local matcha business and we made friendship bracelets and did
Aw.
speed friending, and it was a great time. And we have people that come to us from Raleigh, from the mountains, because there's just not that many spaces
Yeah.
made for actually forming friendships with other fat folks, other people who have maybe similar experiences as you. And it's I do struggle to maintain the energy behind it because I have a podcast, I do my own social media, and I also do this event space. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, "Oh, I can't do another event this month." But next paycheck, because again, like, I'm self-funding a lot of this stuff too, and I might get some
Oh,
payback, but, like, next paycheck, I am booking a pool, and we will be having a fat pool party this summer. Like, I'm determined
yes.
to make it happen, and I'm sure I'll make the money back, but I gotta initially put the money up, and that's always makes me hesitant at first because I think a lot of these, like, there's lots of other fat community groups. It is run off of fat people who are stepping up to do it. It's not like it's
Mhm.
supported by a business. So I think it's just really amazing how many communities are out there doing these kind of spaces and events because a lot of it is people who don't have experience but are doing it anyways just because they value the friendships that they're forming through it.
And you're putting your own money behind some of this? Like, that is incredible. That is a testament to your belief in the cause. And,
Yeah,
like, that's something to be celebrated for sure. What's the reward in that? Do you just feel
yeah.
better because you're creating this community? Do you get awesome relationships in exchange for this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely I have. In fact, my 2 co-hosts on my podcast, the Fab Fatties, I met through Charlotte Plus events. Allie
Yes.
came to our, like, 2nd event, and
I love her.
I hit it
I
off
love
with
her
her.
so much.
She's just so out there personality-wise, like,
I know.
it's unapologetically her, and so, I definitely get a comfort from people who are just out there with their lives and experiences. But the 2nd event she went to was a sex event, and I'm like a coming out, like, I'm a late bloomer, I say, like, I definitely am, like, a late bloomer to my sexuality, to, embracing it, and she was just like, "Yeah, I did this and this and this," and I was like, "I love it," So part of it is meeting other women that are pushing me and making me think, and I met Alyssa. Alyssa met Allie first, but then Alyssa came to a Charlotte Plus event, and that's how we formed as a friendship. So I am making like best friends through the experience. But I do also think for me, women have made spaces for me. Marie Dene of the Curvy Fashionista, Annette of Fat Girls Traveling. These are some like the people who made spaces for me, and those spaces were life changing. And I want to make spaces for others. And I joke that sometimes I don't enjoy the events during them because I'm so hyper aware of putting on the event itself and trying to make things
Uh,
move and take
mhm.
care of people. But I still find it like I have to. It's like a need. I have to do it, and sometimes the rewards come later when I can have a private chat with someone or I can have, maybe
Yeah.
more one-on-one, but I still feel so strongly that there are spaces that are needed that, yeah, that is a big thing I get back from it.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to hear this. I'm happy to hear this. I think it's absolutely so needed, but it kind of makes me a little bit sad that we have to put like that much effort into creating the space when there should be
Yeah.
already. Like
Yeah, and I think part of me is like, okay, I think I'm also walking back a little bit and saying like not everything has to be a huge event. I
Yeah.
could throw out to the group, "Hey, who wants to go to Torrid on such and such
Yes.
date?" Because a lot of, like, I have fat friends, but a lot of fat people don't. And so
Why
going
is that?
shopping, you know, yeah, why is that? I growing
Is
up,
it the stigma?
I don't know if it's a stigma or if it's also like an element of, even if you did have fat friends, you didn't talk about being fat with them, and it kind of felt like a big bridge to cross. Growing up, I definitely was the biggest in my friend group. There were some other girls that were chubbier, who probably they themselves felt big, but I absolutely was the biggest in
Mm,
my school that I know of. And so part of that's like my experience of, like, I've not only been fat, but I've also been the biggest fat person in a room of fat people. And um and as I talk to people, what I find is just naturally in their social circles, they're not making other friends who are fat, or if they do not talk to that friend about being fat. They might be work friends, they talk about work, they might be friends at church, they talk about church, but it feels a little bit hard for a lot of people to talk about that as part of their identity. So like they'll end up saying things like, "Oh, where'd you buy that cool shirt you're wearing?" But they'll keep it to that versus being like,
yeah.
uh, what's my actual experience going into stores and buying clothes? How do you navigate shopping online only? So I think what happens is at these events, we are getting people who have already found us in some ways. They're probably finding fat community online, and they're already taking a step beyond what they have been doing. And
Mhm.
so when they're coming in, they are seeking maybe a different kind of friendship with fat people than they've had in the past. Um,
Mm.
yeah, because I know for me, like, I had fat siblings, but we didn't talk about being fat. We'd talk about diets. We'd talk about needing to lose weight. All the things that
The
we've had
things that
to
are
grow up.
okay.
Yeah, like we can be fat as long as we're trying not to be fat, right? But it
Okay.
wasn't until I was much older, and it absolutely has been easier to talk to people who are not my family about these things. And and yeah, so it's also just giving a space for people to have a different conversation than they've gotten to have in the past too.
That is so enlightening because I would call myself mid-size. I'm at a 14 right now.
Mhm.
And I for me, I don't always see the perspective of someone bigger.
Mhm.
And for you to say no, I want to discuss the real, whether it's a struggle, whether it's a joy, whatever it is. I want to talk about what it means to be fat. It
Yeah.
makes me I'll be keep it 1,000 with you. It makes me uncomfortable to use the word fat
Yeah, I
because
think for
we
a lot of people.
because it's been it's always had this negative connotation.
Well, it's been
And
weaponized, and why
yeah.
would a lot of times, like, my niece humbles me daily, and, whenever I go see her, she likes to say little things. She's 4 years old, or no, she just turned 5. But, like, the thing is I used to be bigger. I am in a smaller body than I used to be. I definitely see the difference in how I get treated in my current body compared to that, even though I'm still very much fat,
Mm,
very much in the plus size space. Um, the other week, I came by her and she goes, "Why do you look so bulky?" And I was like, "Bulky?" She goes, "Why do you look so fat?" And immediately my mother, grandma says, "Don't say the word fat." You know,
oh,
and we learned that so early because let's face it, like if she hadn't said it to me and she said it to someone else, they probably would be upset. And it probably would hurt them. And I think, yeah, I joke that whenever I was a teen, I was absolutely fat, but I only got embarrassed if someone called me fat and made it aware
mhm.
that I was fat. It was almost like I didn't think I was fat until someone said it, and I was like, "Oh god, I am fat."
Mm.
Suddenly it made it relevant, so that term holds a lot of weight, pun intended, in our lives because of how it's been used, and how often a lot of us have felt, the need to escape it.
It sounds like the community is taking ownership of the word.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely, um it's moving, it's taking a word that's been used to harm, and it's trying to think of what it is, descriptive word, it's something we all have, right? But then
Mhm,
absolutely turning it on its head to make it also a point of positive belonging. There's this story, like a digital story out there by this man named Keith Dorwick about getting called a slur for being a gay man. And he
Mm.
talks about that moment of being called that slur and how part of it was like, oh, how do they know this about me? But the other part of it was, if this word exists, that means there's other people like me who that word belongs to or that word gets told to. And I do think that is also a feeling of power. Like, yeah, I'm fat and there's other fat people. There's other really cool fat people doing things. And so I do think it is a community word, in certain circles. And it's a point of we have this shared experience as fat people. Um, and and of course there's all these other words, that fashion has used to kind of make it not so blunt, curve, etc. And I
Hmm.
think the community loves how blunt it is because it had been used to weaponize for so long, and still gets
Okay.
weaponized.
It does
Yeah.
daily. It's a
Yep.
shame. I mean, I was, telling you earlier, I understand. I mean, I've seen because I've talked with you, other members of the community now, and I just sit back and I'm like, y'all get way too much hate for absolutely no fucking reason. I really,
I know.
really,
Just out here
it
living
breaks my
life.
heart
Yeah. Just out here
for
living life.
honestly, I'm in the bathing suit. Hello, I'm going to
Yeah.
enjoy life. I'm going to enjoy a nice sunny day by a pool, and you can't be doing that.
Yeah, it it
That's my
does
voice
feel
for
like
those
there's a
roles.
certain expectation to, like, publicly and consistently perform, like, self-flagellation for being fat. Like, we just need to be saying sorry for it over and over again, and it's just like, "No, no,
No, I wouldn't want anybody to feel that way.
no, yeah,
Anybody for whatever isn't societally acceptable, for lack
yeah,
of better term. What Nobody should feel that way. Nobody deserves to live that way. That's how mental illness is spread. That's how
yeah,
suicide becomes the epidemic that I would argue it is.
yeah, for
I,
sure.
I totally uncalled for, and that's why it's important to me to get this story out and to talk with communities that I'm not, I'm not fully involved in, but I want to learn.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's so much more than just that one part of your life too.
yeah,
You're a fantastic example of that. You're doing numerous things. I definitely love the podcast. I love Allie. I
yeah.
love you. I like the Fab Fatties are just incredible. Tell me about it. What can we expect from the podcast?
Well, I think, a lot of it is we based on the idea of we were having these conversations as friends that we have needed and we've needed for a long time. They were
Mm,
just a space where we were able to talk about things that we couldn't talk about with anyone else, but also that we were supporting each other through it, in a way that really strengthened our friendships. I think all of us felt like, okay, we're learning a lot about ourselves, we're learning a lot about fatness, but we're also learning a lot about being friends and how to support people through really complicated feelings. And so we brought that to the podcast and we've talked about all kinds of different topics. And we just released our 17th episode. So we are fairly new, but we're chugging
but
along here.
still,
Yeah, we're chugging along.
yes.
And I think one of the things we're starting to do is we're starting to have guests on, which is what it like you do. It's really fun to learn about other people and their experiences. We definitely want to amplify other fat creators, other fat people doing things. Because a lot of times, we're kind of going against this idea that we shouldn't be living life. Like we should be living life vigorously. And we want
Let's
to,
go.
we want to go out there and do it. So we want to highlight people who are doing really cool things and encourage others. Um, we're gonna start having, like, some fun, like, we feel like we've hit some really heavy topics. We wanna pepper in some more fun stuff, so our next recording is actually gonna be about my dating life, which should be
Ooh!
which should be comical as we started off with our conversation about my DMs. Um, but,
Yes.
yeah, like, I am the chronically single one, and so we're going to dive into that and talk about, like, the apps and my experience on dating
Oh my God.
apps. And I'm gonna put my darn profile up on the screen. Like, let's dissect my profile. Like, tell me what you think you would know about me based on my profile and what should be there as my friends. So I think that'll be a really fun one. And then, like, a couple weeks later, we're gonna have a body image coach come in and do some exercises with us and learn kind of what common things she's seeing people are coming to her as body image issues. Because I definitely
Mm.
think body image has very obviously been an issue for all of me and my co-host. But most of us have really dealt with it independently or through
Yeah.
media that other people have put out there versus with a coach. So very interested to see what work she does.
I'm interested too. That sounds fascinating because I don't know a single woman on earth. Literally, I don't
Right.
know a single woman on earth who hasn't had some sort of body image concern
Yeah.
or
Well,
anxiety about something like that.
and that's the thing we find. Like, yes, we're definitely creating space and centering fat experience, but a lot of our listeners aren't fat and they still relate. They still learn from us. They share experiences in certain ways, and other ways it's new, and they walk away thinking, I never would have thought about that. Thank you for letting me know, you know? And so
Yeah.
I do think a lot of our topics are relevant well beyond the fat experience. It just so happens that we're coming to it through that perspective.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Just
Yeah.
to give perspective to anybody listening that maybe doesn't get it when you say, I want to be able to talk about fat things with my
Mhm.
fat friends.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Break that down for me.
Okay. So, one thing that we have discussed before is kind of like all the different thoughts that might go through a fat person's head when they are preparing to go to an event. All right.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, I remember one year I needed to go somewhere and I needed to wear a pair of shorts and I couldn't get a pair of shorts. The only store in my town that carried my size was Elaine Bryant. It was 40 minutes away.
Mm,
Uh, and so, like, we just don't have access to the same sizes. Target only goes up to a certain size. Walmart only goes up to a certain size. What they have available is pretty low. And then we're looking at the actual money that goes into these things. Then we're having to think about, for some people who are fat, they might have mobility issues. So, what
mm,
does the walking look like? What does the seating look like? For me, it's really hard for me to want to go. Gosh, I would love to go to like theater shows all the time, but so many of those places are not accommodating for bigger bodies that it just feels like A, I'm not wanted, but B, like I'm gonna have to do the mental Olympics to prepare myself to go because I might need to prepare for uncomfortable conversation when I get there. I might need to ask for accommodations. And I, as I gotten older, I've gotten more just like, I don't know, it's easier for me to ask for those things. But when I was younger, I would just sit there and let the chair absolutely put bruises into my hips and legs, and or I'd sit on the edge of the chair with my legs holding me up because I couldn't put my butt all the way back, and then have shame, internal shame for not fitting and not being okay there. Also shame for my guest who comes with me that they're having to be with someone who can't sit in the chair. I mean, it's just and what am I supposed to do? Enjoy the nutcracker after all those feelings? Like,
yeah, that's
that
exhausting.
is a lot, yeah. And then, I think it also just goes to the point of, like, we recently had an episode about being fat in the workplace, and,
Mm,
I'm a fat teacher, and I have students who interact with me differently based on that stuff. Um, I've had students comment on my weight before. Um, I've had
ugh,
I've had classrooms where I literally couldn't fit into a seat, like a desk, even if I wanted to come and sit down next to my students. Meanwhile, Allie used to be a real estate agent where looks were a huge part of her career.
yeah.
So it's okay, we have these experience of being fat in a place where, again, like, fat isn't the norm, and we don't fit in, and people don't think of us. Truly, that's it's an accessibility thing. It's a thinking about diverse experiences thing where we're just not there as society, and I'll include myself in that too, right? We're just not always cognizant of people who might have different needs. And how do we navigate that?
Mm,
And all three of us have very different careers, and it was interesting to see in what ways we overlapped, but also in what ways those industries change things. Being in an academic space, I do mostly have feminist coworkers. So the stuff might not be there great for me. There still might be hints of lots of things that I feel are hard for me. And yet, if I speak up, I'm not going to get shut down because they know that my beliefs kind of lean towards accessibility, et cetera, which a university should be concerned about.
mhm,
Whereas in other industries, again, like real estate, whatever, there might be less
mm.
acknowledgement, acceptance of someone kind of pushing back against the norms. Um, so that was an interesting conversation for us to have that, again, we got different perspectives, but we also were able to, like, get understanding and support
Yeah.
from each
Good
other.
Right, which is so important just on a human level. And
Mhm.
then it helps anybody outside of the community to really take a step back and say, "Whoa, what am I doing?" If I'm
Mhm.
the one that's permeating this nonsense, like I don't want to do that. Maybe I need to think twice before I behave a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah, and granted, me too, me too with other things that I don't think about. I'm a white woman. I don't always clock every racial microaggression, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
so me too in different ways, right? And I think it is just helpful to have like one discussion that maybe helps people think about different body needs and body diversity as one, kind of view into an inclusion conversation that needs to have lots of other conversations about inclusion.
Yeah, further the conversation at the very
Yeah.
least. So
Yeah.
what's next for you? What can we look forward to coming from you?
I don't know. I
That's
don't
an
know.
acceptable answer.
I don't know. I'm riding the wave. I would love to, continue making more stuff. I was very active on my own YouTube channel for a while there, and I stepped back. I would love to get back into doing more things there. I'm definitely putting a ton of energy into the podcast and seeing it grow. We're actually going to be releasing our Patreon soon, so we're hoping that's helpful in terms of doing some new kinds of fun things with our audience. And I think we just want to keep doing more stuff with our podcast. We kind of want to do like the Fab Fatties on the road and go road tripping.
Yes.
We just want to keep taking people along that friendship route with us and trying new things because like, yeah, there's plenty of stuff that scares us still. Like we're going to keep helping each other explore those. So
Yeah.
really looking to push that and continuing to have more conversations, more new experiences. And I think just for me, it's continuing to feel more aligned and authentic and public with who I am this year. I feel like that's the route I'm heading on, and I just want to keep on going with it.
I wanted to ask you that too. Like it's scary opening yourself up and being
Absolutely.
public.
Absolutely.
I mean, forget the fat element. I'm just as a human. That's
Yeah.
scary enough. And
Yeah.
then you add the fat layer on top of it with all the stigma and stereotyping that we see. I know that can't be easy for you. How do you handle that? What was it that made you want to go public and how are you handling it since?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the thing that made me want to go public is the fact that I follow so many fat creators and like I want to be part of the conversation. So I think for me, I so badly and so focusedly like am thinking of me being in conversation with other fat people that sometimes I forget that like, oh, other people also see this and they also have thoughts on it. And while I am totally like I want allies, I want people who aren't fat to still value what I have to say and such like for me, it's definitely just being part of this and this being a place where I can talk about things that affect my life. Because like I don't get to talk about this stuff with I don't know, people I know at work. Like I think
Mhm.
for a certain extent, like for what's hard for me is it does feel a little siloed and I'm trying to allow myself to talk about it in other spaces, not just online, not just on my podcast, but like part of me is like, oh, I don't want anyone from high school to know anything about me, but like I'm probably just gonna have to let it happen, right? Um, As far as, like, the public reception and such, I feel like for the most part, I get good reception because I'm pretty palatable. I
Mhm.
don't say, like, too much pushing the envelope stuff, whereas some of my co-hosts are more willing to do so, and it's not that I don't agree with them, but I guess I'm a little bit more of a reserved person, and I think that does tend to mean that if someone's gonna get trolled, it's probably them and not me. Um,
Mm,
Now there's been times we've been trolled as a group, and that was, interesting, and anytime I say something's interesting, it means it's bad. Um,
yeah.
it was interesting, and gosh, it's just such silliness, like, I think it's really easy for me to dismiss what people have to say when they deny our lived experiences, when they just say that we eat all day, like, when they just make up narratives about ourselves that are so not true, like, it's very easy for me to be like, "Psh, whatever," but I do think, for me, I just don't let it in my space, and that's something that is different with the podcast because 'cause I'm having to collaborate, and other people might be like, "No, I wanna be able to engage with them," and I'm like, oh, because I don't, I want them to disappear." But when it comes to my space, like, I just don't let them in my space. I
Mhm.
block my block button is a quick if I don't if you make a comment that I could that I don't know how to interpret and you're not following me and there's no reason for me to think you're here for good intentions, you're also getting the block.
Bye.
Yeah, if you show up on my YouTube channel, block. Um, we have a couple of YouTubers who've been making videos about us and like,
Really?
yeah, like they'll take our full episode from our podcast and just like be like, oh, these girls are just making excuses, da 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 da. And that's
What
been
audacity?
interesting as well. I think, part of me just feels like, okay, I have to be okay. I can't take it down. I can't remove it. These people can do it. It's called fair use. Um, but I think that like I have to just be at peace with what I'm
Yes.
doing and what I'm making and how I'm engaging with people. And it might not feel fair or great or good, but ultimately, like they're making it and they're engaging with people and being nasty over there. And I don't have to go into that space.
No, you
And
don't.
and I think for me it's really like don't go into that space. I think for some people, if they see others talking about them, it's really hard to ignore and they need to know what people are saying.
Hmm.
I don't need to know what they're saying. And it's taken me a long time to not need to know, but a lot of that comes from just feeling very sure in what I'm doing and very
Hmm.
passionate about what I'm doing that like if they wanna if they wanna say I'm delusional, okay. It really doesn't affect my day-to-day life, right? Like,
No.
so okay. Enjoy
Yeah.
your corner of the internet. I'll be in mine, you know?
Period.
Yeah.
Period. Unless you are Beyonce or Taylor Swift herself, I probably don't care. I'll listen to what they have to say.
There you
But
go. I'm like,
what
who would I
makes
listen?
who would you listen to? If
Oh
you
gosh.
would if anybody was rolling up in your DMs, who would you actually listen to?
Um, you know, the answer's really short. The answer's really short. There's a couple like teachers I had in grad school, I'd at least want to listen to them. When it comes like
Oh,
yeah, when it comes to like just regular names of people, I'm like, mm-mm. I have always been a resistant person to others' opinions. So
mm.
I have a pretty resistant nature as it is. So nah, I'm good.
Makes sense. What
Yeah.
makes you feel like your sexiest self?
Yeah, that's been really hard. It's actually something I really feel like the last 4 or 5 years I've worked on is feeling sexy because I definitely did not feel sexy growing up and again I'm a late bloomer into engaging in my sexuality at all. Um,
Mm.
I mean, I do think for me feeling sexy is not hyper feminine, but I do feel sexiest when I'm a little bit more feminine
Mm.
and I a lot of it is bodily, so it's wearing a perfume I like, it's wearing more, body hugging outfits. I do like showing my body and the shape of my body, and that all makes me feel sexy, and then I think, just when I'm in a good headspace where I'm really enjoying the thing I'm doing, whatever that activity is, it's giving me energy, that's also gonna make me feel really sexy.
Period. I'm
Mhm.
taking notes over here. Thank you so much for your time, Rebecca. Thank you for your nuggets of wisdom. Thank you for sharing everything that you have with us. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking with you, Val. Thanks so much.